Hello, and welcome to Exploring Axon, a podcast where we discuss Axon Framework, Axon Server, and their ecosystem. I am your host and a software developer at Axonic, Sarah Torrey. In this episode, I spoke with Vijay Nair about his experience of finding out about domain-driven design, CQRS, and event sourcing. He also explained some of the tools that can be used with Axon Framework and Axon Server, such as Akka and Kafka. I hope you enjoy this episode, and let's have a listen. Hi, Vijay. How are you today?
I'm fine, Sarah. How about yourself?
Fine. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today and waking up extra early to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
That's right. Yes, I'm on my third cup of coffee already. So
You're two ahead of me, and it's already towards the end of my day. That's great. That's how we got to start the day, right? With little kids and during pandemic time, and you just gotta
yeah,
keep your mind going first thing in the morning.
that's true.
Fantastic. So, Vijay, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Where are you located? Because we have this big time difference. Where are you at?
Yeah, so I'm located out of California. I think just to give you a brief background, I've been working in the industry for close to around 20 years. I started off
Hmm.
as a dev, now act as a platform architect during the day
Yeah.
for a large organization. And then
Hmm.
by evening, I'm like, I turn into a CQRS event sourcing ninja. So I,
Yeah, and you are. You really are.
and I evangelize. I love DDD, CQRS, yes. And I think,
Hmm.
I've taken it upon myself, self-proclaimed uh, evangelist for those patterns. So
That's
that's what
fantastic.
I did.
And of course, as I mentioned earlier, you're a parent too. So I don't even know how you do all of these things. You juggle them, and every time I talk to you, you've come across something new and fascinating, and then you become an expert in it in like 2 days, which is like
So
amazing.
I apply the same philosophy. So eventually, so event sourcing is all about eventual consistency. So
Hmm.
I deal that with the same. I deal in the same manner with my kid too. Eventually, she'll be okay. So
Yeah, I like that. I like that. My philosophy is as long as they're fed and well in bed at night, we did
yeah,
okay. We did a good job. We survived. Fabulous. So you did say that you came across DDD and CQRS and event sourcing on your own, and you fell in love with it, and you studied on your own, basically. And as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, you uh, are finding out all of these new technologies and platforms that go along with these structural aspects that we were just talking about. Tell me a little bit about that. What made you so interested in domain driven design, event sourcing, CQRS?
right. So, yeah, so around 3 years ago, I was leading this platform re-architecture project where we were kind of building the next generation of a platform that was
Right.
used by financial services.
Mhm.
And essentially, it was written in the old, in a set of old technologies, and then we wanted to move it to the new way.
Mhm.
And during that process, what I found out was we were going back to essentially doing the same thing again in open systems, and we're
Mhm.
running into the same problems,
Right.
irrespective of the technology. It was the same thing, and that's when I got introduced to the concept of domain-driven design. How it kind of helped me systematically break down the entire application, complemented with CQRS and ES. And I think the reason why I got interested in CQRS was because, and I don't know if you know this, CQRS came about because DDD itself had become very complex, right? The
Right.
whole, the
Right.
whole process of modeling of DDD itself had become complex. And that's why
Mhm.
CQRS was introduced.
Right.
And once CQRS was introduced, which helped you split your domain model,
Mhm.
which was like a much neater and easier way to do it. And people
Mhm.
always think that CQRS is because of scalability. And no, it was actually because DDD had become complex. So here you
Right.
go. Here's another way to kind of split your domain model and rule it.
Mhm.
And the final piece of the puzzle was around event sourcing.
Yeah.
CQRS did something like events to glue the models together.
Mhm.
So you can do it with event sourcing and without event sourcing using regular events.
Mhm.
But I've come to the conclusion that event sourcing is the only way that you can arrive at the state properly. So
I
you
see.
can't do it without event sourcing.
Gotcha.
So these three together kind of like really, it lit up a tube light in my head, not a regular light. It was a tube
One
light.
thing,
But it took
right?
some time for me to realize. And then once I realized it, and then I started applying it into that project, I was like
Hmm.
drawn to it. And I don't think so there is a better way to build systems anymore. You need to do DDD, CQRS, and ES. Yeah.
And were you successfully able to get your team members to sort of go along with you, or was it a lot of resistance when you were
I,
switching this sort of like, looking at it, this way of doing things?
right. And it's a complete change in mindset because event
Right.
sourcing talks about storing your application as a state of events rather than
Hmm.
as a regular state. Uh,
Right.
so no, it was very very difficult because people just don't get it, right? So that
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
It's
it took
very complex, and I think it takes a bit of time to really sort of understand the concept first of all, and then to apply it in an existing project. Because of course, as an existing project grows bigger and older, things get a little bit harder to change. I feel like sometimes as we're getting older, it's harder sometimes to change our minds about certain things. And
right.
sometimes with projects, it's too big and you don't know where to begin and how to convert it from one way of doing it to this new way of doing it.
Yeah.
That's what I
and it,
understand.
Yeah, and it does require a lot of discipline and a lot of
Mhm.
education. And if
Yeah,
you are a senior member of the team or an architect, I feel that 80% of your time in the initial phase is not spent on design, but actually educating people about
sure.
event sourcing and getting that modeling process in place to help you succeed.
Mhm.
If you do not
Yeah.
do that, I don't think so. You're going to be successful with it.
Yeah, and I think we'll come back to the modeling process in a bit later during our talk. But before we get there, I'm part of Axon, so I have to ask you about that. And you actually do have a book that talks about Axon framework and somewhat, I think, Axon server as well. Can you tell me a little bit about how you came to know about it and what actually got you interested?
Yeah, I think when I was building this whole when we were re-platforming the whole product, one thing that came to my mind was our focus as even as an architect was to
Mhm.
concentrate on business aspects of your product. You don't want to
Right.
start writing. You're not in the infrastructure business. You're
Hmm.
selling. You're selling a product which is being consumed by banks. So you want to write code which kind of helps you get there. And we were spending a lot of time building out infrastructural components in the DD, on DDD CQRS.
Hmm.
Essentially, we were implementing what the patterns told us to do,
Right.
and soon it got pretty out of whack because we were like, oh my god, this is not what it is complex. Okay, it is not
Yeah,
easy to do.
it
And
really is. Yeah.
yeah, and then I started looking at other purpose-built platforms which kind of helped us get there, which
Hmm.
provided me the infrastructure pieces while I could focus on my business code. And Axon popped up immediately. I think it was the only thing that actually came up like right bang in the center, saying that, hey,
Yeah.
focus on the business code. Let us do what the patterns tell us to do. We do a pretty good job of implementing it, and
Hmm.
and it's true. I think. I mean, I can keep on going on and on about Axon, so I'll stop myself. But
Don't stop because I want to ask you more questions. But yes, go ahead.
yeah, I think the fundamental aspect of Axon, and people, I don't know if they know it or not, is I think they pioneered the concept of not only events, but it's also about
Hmm.
commands and queries. And there's absolutely nothing else which comes even close to that
Right.
because so they treat all three as first class citizens: commands, queries,
Hmm.
and events. And you
Yes.
go to other folks and they're like, it's all about events. And I
Right.
think
Right.
I think kept on telling people that it's not events, it's commands and queries. And I think now we have reached a state, and you would believe it or not, I think I've been seeing a lot of articles over the past 1 month which says that it's also about commands and queries. But hey,
Yeah.
Axon already is already 3 years ago.
We did it first.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you said you came across Axon about probably 3 or so years ago.
Right.
Do you remember which version was it that you started with?
I think it was
It's probably two,
something, yeah,
two or
probably
three.
in the twos or something at that point of time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And then,
And we're on 4.4 now, or yeah,
yeah,
we're almost going on 4 or 5.
and, and it's just getting better, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will kind of dive deeper into that in just a couple of minutes. But before I do that, I did mention your book. So you did write a book called Practical DDD in Enterprise Java, and part of it does talk about Axon. So can you tell me a little bit about that book? You do talk about the structural concepts of domain-driven design, of course, and CQRS, and you do talk about event sourcing. Without basically giving too much away of your book, because I do want people to go and get it. It's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. It was actually one of the first books that I read when I learned about domain driven design, and it was really helpful because it put it in more digestible, shorter sort of way of explaining things, which was also very understandable. So I did appreciate that a lot about your book, but I'll let you talk about it and tell everybody what it's about and what you wanted to achieve with that book.
Actually, yeah, it was a book probably written out of frustration. So DDD,
Okay.
so DDD is great, and there is a lot of literature around DDD and
Hmm.
CQRS.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, and this is my personal view, and I don't know
Yeah,
if folks from the DDD world are going to listen to your podcast too.
I
I
hope
think
so. Yeah.
there was, it feels extremely complex to get into, and it feels that DDD is all about the social technical design and
Mhm.
speaking the same language, and I think there's a lot of entry barriers to actually adopting DDD.
Right.
So my book was all about practical implementations of DDD. Hey, I'm not
Hmm.
a rockstar programmer. I'm not going to be doing these kind of great designs.
Hmm.
If you've got Spring Boot or if you've got Eclipse Microprofile,
Hmm.
how do you start going about building these basic concepts, right? And
Yes.
if you look at my book, I purposely don't talk about tactical and strategic concepts of DDD.
Hmm.
I just
Hmm.
tell people that, hey, this is what you do when you want to build out your domain model or when you want to
Hmm.
build out your domain services. If you've got Spring Boot, this is what you do, and if you've
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
Microprofile, this is what you do. And I think the final chapter was because since I was using Axon at that time, how about just elevating and closing of the book with a bang by just
Yeah.
talking about CQRS and why CQRS along with DDD and why
Yeah.
event sourcing and I reached out to Alard and he did a pretty bad job of reviewing the chapter, but
Why?
yeah, but I think he's gonna go through. And he was like, yeah, yeah, blah, blah, blah. He just gave me some comments. And it was later when he actually, I don't think so he read it. I think it was always on a flight. So,
That's too good. Okay.
and then I
I have to
finally,
ask him, did you actually read the chapter?
you should, okay, you should, because I don't think so he did. But I think he did read it at some point of time later.
Yeah.
And this is a funny thing because he told me, hey, this is really not how that thing gets done.
So do we have like an appendix to this chapter? By the way,
I,
go do it this way.
I actually had to reach out to the publisher. Luckily, it had not got published yet, and said that
Oh, nice.
yeah. So I need to make some critical changes to the last chapter, and they
Hmm.
had to stop publishing. They had to get my new draft in, and then
Yeah.
uh,
That's too funny. Hey, but thankfully you caught it before it went out. So that's
I
great.
I think he got it whenever he got time. He decided to read it finally.
No, but the timing was good because the book wasn't published yet. So that's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I think the book's got some pretty good. I've got some nasty feedback too, and which is fine because I really don't get into design at all. I'm
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
all about the practical implementation of it.
Yeah.
And some people liked it. Some people, I think, the majority of people did like it because it gives you that
Mhm.
stepping stone into
Sure.
world of
Sure.
DDD.
How to start it, yeah, which is nice. And it's really difficult to of course please everybody, and
Yeah,
everyone coming from different backgrounds, so it's hard to and as you mentioned previously, and I completely understand that the topic itself is so complex that um it's really hard to get a hang of it. And so a lot of the times that, for me personally, when many of the literature that I read the first time, it didn't make any sense to me. So I had to go back to it. And sometimes, even if you go back to it immediately and read it, it still doesn't make any sense until you have some practical experience, some sort of like getting your hands dirty a little bit in the code or in the design aspect of it or modeling of it, whatever you're working on at that specific point in time. And then when you go back and read that literature again, it sort of, sometimes for me at least, certain things go ding, that makes sense, okay, that's what it was talking about. Right. And that's not too uncommon. I think that's how we learn a lot of times, and that's how we see a lot of things in life, right? So sometimes it does make sense and you have to move away from it and then come back to it and say, oh yeah, that makes sense now, or it still doesn't make sense, who knows.
Yeah.
So let's go back and we did talk about Axon's versions a little bit. So when you first started working with Axon, it was in a couple of previous versions, and now we're on version 4. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you saw different from the older versions of Axon that you worked on and or you worked with, and now that we're in this current Axon 4.4, what are the kind of main changes that you realized and you liked, maybe?
Yeah, I think there has been a lot of focus on, on developer experience. I think that's something
Hmm.
that's kind of changed quite a bit since when I started initially working with it. And
Hmm.
it's not only about the developer experience, there is also a lot of focus that's being put on automating every aspect of an operational Axon server. So basically, for
Right.
operators, how you want to automate the whole thing in terms of creation of clusters, and
Right.
in terms of configuring snapshots. So there
Hmm.
is a lot more focus, which is excellent because it takes away a lot of these were difficult to do before, but now
Right.
you've got a set of features that are there, and these capabilities help you automate the entire life cycle of your
Hmm.
Axon server deployment. So right from creation of a cluster to automating anything and everything that happens as part of the Axon server cluster.
Hmm.
4.4 kind of completed those capabilities. So a lot of automation is what I see, which is good from a framework perspective.
Hmm.
There has always been, I think Axon traditionally has been framework first, then server. So now I see that good
This time
balance.
around, it was a little bit, yeah, reverse, because we focused a lot on the server in this release
Yeah, and
versus the framework. Yeah.
that's been good because I think people do need to realize that, and I'll talk about it later. When I've got this something known as the event sourcing capability map, it's not
Right.
only about the framework but also about the corresponding physical infrastructure that you need to support
Hmm.
event sourcing, and it's not
Right.
easy. And Axon server is just there, so it just helps you do that, but it
Hmm.
has been traditionally lacking in automation, but 4.4 kind of completes that.
Right.
It's much easier for operators to perform stuff with 4.4 on the server side.
Right.
And on the framework, obviously, there has been capabilities around tag-based routing, availability as an event scheduler, as well as again, integration with your Spring developer tools, which had
Hmm.
some issues, but now that's also been fixed. So I think it's been great. I think 4.4 is a market release.
Yeah. Yeah. This is our crown jewel of release this time around. I think we were internally very happy with it. So hopefully, externally, it's been as enjoyable to work with. I think so.
Yeah.
We've gotten some good feedback, which is nice. Um, so as far as the other systems used with Axon, let's talk about that a little bit as well. I do want to focus on two main ones that you have done quite a bit of extensive research on. One is Akka, and the other one is Kafka. And you can take your pick. Which one would you like to cover first?
Yeah, so as an evangelist, I keep on researching other systems which are purpose built for event sourcing and
Right.
CQRS. And yeah, I think one of the things that I wanted to check was with how does Axon compare with Kafka as well as Axon compared with Akka, and I'll go with Akka first.
Okay.
And
So what is Akka? Tell me. I have not
Akka,
worked with it, so educate me, please.
So Akka has been around for quite some time. I think it comes
Hmm.
from this company called Lightbend, and it's quite popular in the distributed systems and concurrency world because it
Right.
helps you build simpler concurrent and distributed systems as they came on their website, which is true.
Hmm.
And essentially, they follow something known as the actor model.
Right.
And what the actor model essentially states is that it's a conceptual model actually to deal with concurrent computation. Each actor is on its own,
Right.
and it's a primitive unit of computation, and it's the thing that receives a message and it does some kind of computation around it. So
Hmm.
every actor is isolated. Every actor acts in its own memory space.
Hmm.
So you really don't deal with concurrent computation as in with traditional systems. So that's
Right.
what the actor model is all about. So it essentially tells you that on a single CPU you can process millions of messages more on an actor model rather than a traditional threading based model.
I see.
So that's what Akka is all about. It's all about the
Right.
actor model. They introduced it, and it's been quite popular. They've kind of got a lot of success with that model.
Hmm.
So I think of late they decided to even start getting into the event sourcing world because they are also all about messages, right?
Right.
So they were like, okay, so we've got these messages. We work well with actors. We already have this messaging model. So why don't we just extend it to CQRS
Hmm.
also? So so
And that's
actor.
how they came about the event sourced Akka actor.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly. So that's what they say. So it's the same thing like an Axon. So
Hmm.
Axon provides the capability to process commands, queries, and events as messages,
Right.
but it uses the traditional threading model, and it's quite scalable. It's not that it's not; it's extremely scalable, as we know.
Yeah.
But Akka has got its own way of dealing with it. But they say that an actor will deal with commands, queries, and events. Uh,
Hmm.
and so you have a command which kind of generates an event, and then you've got a query message which also an actor deals with. So they were able to apply that quite easily onto the
Similarly. Yeah.
similarly to that. So that's how they've kind
Yeah.
of getting into it. And I think they just re-architecting, or I mean, this is from my own personal research. Maybe I'm wrong, but from what I understood was they were kind of getting this whole thing around the Akka brand, and
I see.
because they have something called Lagom, which used
Hmm.
to do this before, but from what I
Hmm.
understand now, is I think they're all kind of standardizing this under the Akka brand, and then
Hmm.
Akka provides you the purpose-built platform for CQRS and event sourcing. So
Nice. Okay.
similarly to how you have Axon framework, you've got
Hmm.
Akka on the Akka side,
Right.
and similarly to how you have Axon Server, they rely on an external physical infrastructure to store events. So
Mm.
they don't provide a physical infrastructure themselves. They
Right.
say use an external one like Cassandra or something of that sort.
Hmm. Hmm. And when I was reading the article that you had written about Akka, you did mention Akka persistence module and Akka persistence module APIs. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Akka persistent module is the name of the module
Hmm.
itself. So it's like Axon framework,
Yes.
and the API is what it provides to help implement the event sourcing and the CQRS operations. So the API, helps you retrieve all the events for a particular actor. It
Hmm.
helps you publish events once a particular command is handled. So
Hmm.
essentially, how we integrate with Spring Boot, and we
Yeah.
provide
Yeah.
an API around Spring Boot.
Hmm.
Akka does the same thing using the Akka persistence type API.
Mm, I see. So that's very, very similar then to how we do it in Axon with the APIs to build CQRS event-based applications
Right.
based on DDD. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Um, then, so these are what you basically call the logical infrastructure of the two.
Right.
Can we talk about the physical infrastructure of the two as well?
Yeah.
So in Axon, we have the buses and versus we have, I guess, journal, event snapshot journal in Akka.
Yeah. So we call it the event journal. We've got the messages, the
Hmm.
message buses like command, query, and event. And Akka doesn't provide a physical infrastructure. So
Hmm.
what they say is that you should use something like a Cassandra
Right,
or
right.
something like Slick DB is what I think they also do. But they
Hmm.
integrate they integrate well with the Akka API. So I think their focus is on the API and
Hmm.
on the framework, if I may, and they rely on the physical infrastructure for something for someone else to do it for you.
Gotcha.
And
Whereas we
we've
use
got
the
our
buses.
Action server, yeah.
Yeah, Axon server that uses the buses. Very good. So, to conclude this little topic, what is your opinion on what are the use cases for either Axon versus Akka, or is one better than the other? Why would it be better? Why would it be worse? Why we shouldn't even compare maybe the two of them?
Yeah, I think I mean I never know. I think as an evangelist, it's my uh, life mission to be neutral. So
Yes, of course,
never,
and it's
never.
always the answer is like it depends, right? It depends on what you're using it for.
But I'll tell you, I think if you're within the Java ecosystem, you've got investment in boot. Not that Axon does not work apart from boot, but if you've got a big investment and you need everything within a single system,
Hmm.
so I think Axon definitely shines out there because they provide you
Yeah,
the framework and the server, so you don't
and the
have to
server,
have
of course.
different aspects, and it's integrated with boot, works well with Java,
Hmm.
so you don't have a problem with that. So if you want to use, if you do not want to use Spring Boot, you can use the new Axon Server connector,
Hmm.
build up your own clients, and that's where it's all come out from.
Right,
So Axon definitely shines when you've got everything in one single system, right?
right,
Definitely there. Akka definitely shines when you have got the actor model already in place, and
right.
you've got heavy investment in actor model, and you're like, that's the only way I'm going to do stuff. Then of course Akka, is definitely the choice for you. But I think
Hmm.
Akka should have a corresponding event source infrastructure to really kind of up the game, in
Yeah,
my view. And maybe they're
yeah.
working on it, but
Maybe
because
we'll find out. Yeah. Now, can you work with Akka and Axon? For instance, use Akka and then use Axon server. Can we do that?
I think that's something that was the last statement in my blog because Axon
Hmm.
Server's APIs are so open,
Yes.
and since it uses gRPC, it's got a
Hmm.
host of APIs. It's not only about gRPC; it's got a connector, it's got HTTP. So
Yep.
they really can you can have other clients built which can use it. So a definite integration point would be to use the Akka API,
Hmm.
the persistence API, and then link it with the Axon server
Hmm.
for being the event journal. And I think that's something that needs to be investigated. I think it
Hmm.
can be done. I did speak to Alard, and he said that's a good integration point. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
next item on the to-do list, right? To look at. Fantastic. Anything else you wanted to mention about Akka, or shall we move to
Um,
Kafka?
yeah. I think it's either an Akka or a Kafka. I think, I think Kafka has been. I mean, it's a giant in the streaming world. I think let's not kid
Yeah,
ourselves. And a lot
yeah.
of people use Kafka. It has really solved a lot of pain points for a
Hmm.
lot of customers in taking events out of the system, and
Hmm.
basically bringing. At least we need to credit them to say that they really brought events to the center.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, but you cannot use it for event sourcing for sure.
You're right. Yeah, yeah.
It's a great streaming platform. I think it's the only dominant event streaming platform. And if you're not
Hmm.
using, if you're not using Kafka, what are you using, right? So that's
Right.
so. I think,
Axon. Oh, but yeah,
so,
definitely. I understand.
and I think that's what we're seeing. I think a couple of discussions that I've had with a couple of folks is that people are now realizing, that Kafka is excellent on the streaming side and Axon's
Hmm.
great on the event sourcing side, and
Right.
there are a category of events that each of these solutions aim for. Uh,
Hmm.
and so you have a lot of events that are going out in the system. So let's talk about a booking, right? So when you
Right.
do a flight booking, you choose your schedule, you choose your itinerary, you choose your preferences, and all these are events that actually are generated from a domain.
Right.
But the only event that folks are interested in is whether the flight got booked or not by this individual,
Exactly.
and
They don't
that's
care about anything else in the background, right?
so that's the milestone event, right? And
Yeah.
I think the milestone events are perfect for Kafka, while all the other
Hmm.
events that are used for completion of the booking are excellent for Axon,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For because that's within your domain, within your bounded context, you don't really
Hmm.
worry about it later. So and you can use Kafka just for the milestone event because that's what it's going to be used for. Yep.
Hmm.
So that's
And we
where
do have a, yep, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, that's it. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And we do have a Kafka extension for Axon. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
And I think it was exactly for this purpose, right? So use Axon, continue to use Axon for your domains, and when you
Hmm.
realize that this is a milestone event, push it onto Kafka. And the Kafka connector from Axon helps you do that. So every event that goes into the Axon server or the event
Hmm.
bus can also be pushed onto Kafka. And
Hmm.
you've got the APIs that help you do that pretty elegantly. So you can
Nice.
not only push it onto Kafka, and
Hmm.
you're still using Axon framework. So you don't have to use a third party framework to help you achieve that.
Right.
Axon understands this, so it gives you the framework capabilities, and that's what the Kafka connector is all about. So
Hmm.
using the same constructs that you use with an Axon, you're familiar with Axon,
Right.
extend it to push it onto Kafka. So that's what the
To Kafka.
Kafka connector does. Yeah.
And like, do we have something that's are we supporting it, say, in production level? Do we have any sort of roadmap for it? Are we working on it? Do you
They are
have
working
any
on it.
ideas?
I'm pretty sure Steven's working on it, and
Yeah.
he's getting it to a place where it can be
Hmm.
available pretty
Yeah.
quickly. I think
Yeah.
there is a lot of interest in customers wanting to use that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we will have a talk with Stevens probably sometime in the near future about that to talk a little bit further. Um, Fabulous. So now we know that we can use Kafka and Axon kind of hand in hand. Is there any point where you would recommend somebody to switch from Kafka to Axon Server, or does it make any sense? Or again, it depends on what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a lot of, I mean, Axon itself has got a pretty robust event bus, right? So
Hmm. Yes.
it can deliver the events to wherever you want to deliver it to.
Hmm.
But I think switching over from to a complete streaming, and this is just my view. I
Yeah.
think because I think it's not that it cannot do it; it's just that there
Right.
is just so much investment in the ecosystem right now. It's difficult to replace,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So, and you don't want to if it's working, don't touch it, right? So.
Don't touch
Uh,
it, right? As they say, if it doesn't hurt, don't touch it. Let it be. Yeah.
Kafka provides you the KSQL, and then they've got a lot of capabilities which act on the stream of events. But
Hmm.
Axon's responsibility is to deliver the event, and then you build projections out of it.
Right. Right.
So it's a very application centric thing that Axon does, and it does a great job. And but
Hmm.
Kafka can't do that, and vice versa, right? So it's very
Yeah.
complementary.
Right, exactly. So bottom line, if if it's working for you in a certain way and you just want to enhance it, you can use them together at the same time. If it's something that you're building from ground up, you can choose
Yeah.
either or, and just go with what works best for the project. Um, Last thing I want to talk to you about, you had a conversation with Adam Dimitrick, which I also spoke with last year, about event modeling. And that's something that has been an interest of mine for quite some time. And I find it a very useful tool in my toolbox.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your talk with him and what made you interested in that topic? And did you benefit from
Oh,
learning about event modeling?
I think Adam's been quite a pioneer in that, and he hit the sweet spot when people do not really know how to go about the whole modeling process. Of course,
Right.
event storming was there, and then there was high level event storming and design level event storming, which helps you
Hmm.
format the model. That was
Absolutely.
one of the modeling techniques that was already in place.
Yeah.
But then there was user story mapping. So there's one stream of thought in the modeling world which goes along that path, and
Yeah.
then there is Adam who pioneered this concept of event modeling, which says that
Right.
hey, you know we can just model this as a timeline, and that was beautiful, right? Because
Yeah.
that's all
Absolutely.
about events which was there. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it benefited a lot. I reached out to him, and since I do multiple jobs to support my family. I also
Yeah.
write for InfoQ as an editor.
You
So
do.
I
Yes.
yeah, so I reached out to him and I said, "Would you be interested in this?" And he was a gentleman. I think he kind of gave all his inputs. I think event modeling is quite good. It's
Yeah.
great. It kind of finally crystallizes what you want to see from your whole
Yeah.
CQRS event sourcing aspect. It really, really helps you crystallize that.
Yeah.
And the best part is because it fits in so well at Axon's own philosophy.
Hmm.
of testing and development, because that gives,
Yes.
right,
It
that
makes it so much easier. Yeah, to test and
it
develop.
actually
Absolutely.
helps you test your software too. So I would say it's the version of TDD in
Yeah.
the CQRS world. So,
Mhm.
and that's what event modeling really helped me do.
So, that yes, we both know it's a really really useful tool to have, and it's very visual, which for me makes things a lot easier because I'm a visual person. I like to see things, and then being able to have that model, and of course it uses many aspects of event storming, and so you have that part to basically get your thoughts organized a bit, and then with, as you mentioned, with testing and test fixtures that we have at Axon, it really helped me personally to uh, see how that model really translates into code, which is why with our colleague Yvonne, I wrote a blog series about it because I found it so interesting and wonderful to use. But aside from event modeling, and as you talked a little bit about modeling earlier in our talk, do you have other tools like um, bounded context mapping, other
Aggregated.
ways of, yeah, ways of basically organizing your systems, your project? Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I would highly recommend. Well, yeah, event modeling does get you to a certain level. I like
Mhm.
to combine modeling techniques, especially when it comes to the final code. I would
Right.
highly recommend, reading these folks from DDD Crew. I don't know if you know about them.
Hmm.
They do a fabulous job of
Yeah,
articulating the whole DD modeling process too.
absolutely. Yeah.
They don't do event modeling, if I may be mistaken, but I think they follow the whole event storming
Yeah.
process and extend it to come up with the aggregate canvas, the bounded
Yes, I
context
think so
canvas.
too. Yeah.
These are fabulous toolkits, which help you really visualize and put it into place. Uh,
Hmm.
I think the only thing that I feel missing, probably it's a $500,000 idea, not $1 million, is that somebody can just bring it all together into a system and
Yeah.
get it. But there is another initiative that I'm working on right now quite heavily with, and I think it's could be out of the blue. Is we are tying up with this, not tying up actually. We have reached out to the folks from Async API. Uh,
Hmm.
we have heard about them.
Hmm.
So Async API is a foundation which so you know about Swagger, right? Or
Yes.
documentation around REST, and
Yeah.
so it's the same thing that's been brought out to the events world. How do you model your events, and how do you kind of
Right.
document it and everything? And
Nice.
we are actually integrating extensions for commands and queries also there. So
Really cool. I
that,
can't
that
wait to, yeah, I can't wait to see that.
yeah,
Sounds really
it's
cool.
pretty good.
Yeah, fantastic. Um, I lied. I do have one more question for you. So, regarding your book, so the first book that you worked on, which was fabulous, I think you have another book coming up, right?
Yeah,
Or you're
and
working on another one? Is
yeah,
that
so I
true?
think
Are the
that's true.
rumors true?
Yeah, so I'm working on another book with my reviewer, Allard Boys. So
Nice.
yeah, so I think we're writing a book together, and I think it's called the Pocket Guide to
Cool.
CQRS and sourcing with Axon.
Okay.
So, and I think my
So why
focus
is
is
it a pocket guide? Is it actual pocket size, like little version?
it is
Portable version? Yeah.
my focus has always been to kind of democratize the whole concept, right? There are a lot
Right.
of people like me who are out there, who feel intimidated by these topics, right?
Yeah.
And it's just stepping stone. And I think Axon's the right way to get you into CQRS and event sourcing, and the
Mhm.
Pocket Guide aims you to get there. So it shows you everything about CQRS and event sourcing quickly, because
Yeah.
everybody just wants it quickly nowadays.
Right, right.
And then you use Axon for it. Yeah, so it should be out in the next 3 to 4 months.
Nice. Oh, that's something that I'm really looking forward to because Axon was the thing that got me into DDD and event
Sure.
sourcing. So I'm really, really excited to see that coming out.
That's what people said. If you're not using Axon, what are you using? Right?
That's what I say, right?
So,
Fantastic. Vijay, thank you so much for giving me so much of your time today and talking to me about all these different wonderful topics and research that you actually have done, and so beautifully and comprehensively talked about it and made me understand. And I hope that helps the other audience members understand these terms a little bit better, or at least get them a little bit more curious to find out more about it. But you do have the blogs on both the Axon website and also InfoQ. Um, do you have any other articles elsewhere that people can go and find out more information about?
So I've started posting. I mean, of course, apart from the ones that you talked about, I also post on LinkedIn, regular
Yes.
snippets about CQRS,
Yeah,
and,
good.
I also have. I think this month, and I hope to publish my first newsletter about CQRS happenings, across the world. So,
Fantastic.
yep, that's
That's
good.
definitely something to look forward to for sure. So I will go ahead and include all of the links on this episode. That way, everybody can easily access them. Thank you again for your time, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day.
It's been my pleasure, Sarah. You've become a mini celebrity in the world of DDT.
Oh,
So,
you're too kind. I don't know about that.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, congrats on the number of downloads. So, was it? Yeah, thanks again, Sarah. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you. It's my pleasure. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
You
Talk to you
too.
soon.
Bye.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please join me next time as I discover more about responsibility driven design as well as design heuristics. Until then, have a great time and happy coding.